Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Claire, President of the Webby Awards, coming to you from our office in New York City. I want to say welcome, and we're so excited to have you join us today. Uh, Today, we are hosting the third event in our Way to New event series, and we're talking about the theme that is on everyone's mind at the moment, the games industry. Together with YouGov, we've spent the last 6 months exploring the unprecedented explosion of online innovation over the last few years, looking at technologies and trends that are facilitating more connected and impactful digital experiences. And the games industry is one of the most exciting areas in this space. So we have two really smart, insightful thought leaders in this space. We have Archit Bhargava, who is an old friend of the Webby Awards and the Director of Worldwide Product Marketing at Niantic, and Nicole Pike, who is the Global Head of Esports and Gaming at YouGov. And we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to get Nicole to kick off today's event with a short presentation that's going to take us through some data which shows super interesting consumer trends in gaming. And then we're going to bring on Archit to talk about Niantic and respond to some of these trends. So let me welcome Nicole, and I'm going to let her take over the screen and blow you away with some insights.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Claire, and thanks to everyone for joining today. We'll keep this pretty brief, but wanted to provide just some good context and data points, because I am from YouGov and that's our bread and butter, around the gaming industry and especially how it's been evolving, from a broader macro industry perspective, but then on a bit more micro level, with some of the trends around COVID and how we might anticipate coming out of that, whenever that may be, however slow or fast. So let's dive in. For those who may not know, just to give a touch of context, you may have already read the Way to New paper, but YouGov is a data and analytics company. We're collecting data from our proprietary panel in over 70 countries around the world. Today, I've focused specifically on the US, just given the fact that it could be an entire hour presentation just looking at global trends. And so just wanted to give us a bit of focus. And specifically for setting the context of our conversation, I think one of the really interesting things is gaming today and how consumers are interacting with gaming is not just sitting down and playing a video game in their home. Not only are there many different types of gaming, whether that be mobile, which I'm sure Archit will speak a lot about today, PC, console, but there's also streamed gaming content. So Twitch, YouTube, very, very popular in terms of people just consuming videos and content related to gaming without actively playing the games. And then we have that little trend called esports, which I'm sure most of you have heard about, and know about a bit, as that continues to gain steam too. So really important to remember, when we're talking about the different contingencies of the industry. Gamers are people who play on any platform, and that's really what we'll focus today's conversation on. And in the US today, among US adults, over 70% are gamers in some way, shape, or form. So gamers are also not one size fits all. And because of that, there are many different experiences, need states, et cetera, that those different groups of gamers are attracted to, and that we'll have a lot of discussion about today. And then gamers engage further with gaming related content through streaming and esports. So just to give a little bit of context. As I mentioned, the majority of Americans are now gamers, and especially interesting to look at this by age and gender. And as we move into older phases of adulthood, we see that the percent of people gaming goes down, but also, which may not be surprising, but also there's more gender parity among gamers. And that's really, really interesting, I think, especially in the context of some of what we'll talk about today, of app-based gaming, casual online gaming. There's certainly a strong female market for that. But we do see that on the whole, males are more likely to game, and younger audiences, of course, are extremely engaged in gaming. And as we'll see with some other data, not just playing games themselves, but also engaging with gaming content in other ways. Really interesting, I think, kind of focusing in on that younger demographic and thinking about the future of online gaming, right? And kind of where things are going and how gaming will continue to fit into our lives. Taking a look at teenagers in particular and how pervasive gaming is in their just their social economy and their day-to-day life. The average male teen is spending over 12 hours a day playing video games. A higher percent of male teens in the US use Discord, which is a communications system platform that's primarily used when people are playing online games. It's a way for them to talk to each other, but there's also a lot of interaction outside of gaming that happens on it. A higher percent of male teens are using that platform versus Facebook, Twitter, or Reddit, three of the more popular social media platforms. So if we're looking at where teen males are spending their time and where, as they age up, they may continue to spend their time, a really important trend to keep in mind. Also, in the past 6 months, 50% of teen males have played Minecraft, just a single online video game. That is just slightly less than the percent who have used TikTok, and more than the percent who have watched Disney Plus or Nickelodeon. So when we think about the changing media landscape and what gaming means, not only in terms of performing and entertainment, but also where people are spending their time and where the eyeballs reside, if you will, really important to keep in mind that growing influence of gaming in our culture. And what that means is that we are not only bringing more gamers into the fold, that 71% number from earlier, but also we're giving gamers more and different ways to engage with gaming content, which is just increasing the amount of time they spend on the category. We see that as a trend in live streaming of video game content. So whether that's on Twitch, YouTube gaming, Facebook gaming, etc. And actually, one really interesting point is if you were to compare these data points back to the data I showed earlier about the percent of people who play games, females, Gen Z females, so kind of that 13 to 24 age range, are more likely to watch streamed gaming content than they are to play video games themselves. So it's really becoming a primary way that people are engaging with the gaming space online. Now to kind of think forward and look at how, there's been a lot written about how COVID has changed gaming and how the gaming industry has evolved and frankly grown tremendously during COVID. But thinking about how things move forward when we're back in person for more events, and certainly I'm sure Archit will have a lot to say with some of Niantic's location-based gaming applications and offerings. But I think it's really important to kind of think about, we're in a point of time, but where might that go in the future? During the pandemic, and I know we're still there, but kind of during the height of it when there were multiple lockdowns around the world in place, 40% of US gamers were playing more than they typically did. Usage of Twitch increased 75% based on our panel in terms of the people who had used Twitch, during the pandemic. And that has attracted a lot of attention and eyeballs from brands, advertisement, basically money coming into the gaming category, not just from an investment standpoint, but also in terms of, again, helping and looking at where the audience is and where advertisers can reach people while they're consuming content. However, almost the same percent of gamers in the US believe that gaming will return to the levels and or importance that it had prior to COVID. And we've actually seen between November 2021 and November 2020, an 8% decrease in the number of Americans who are gaming on a weekly basis. So we have seen to a certain extent that COVID effect, and that's kind of leading to just some questions and uncertainty in the industry around what's next for gaming. Lots of possibilities, and I think one that we'll spend a lot of time on today is how will gaming and the real world start to interact with each other more. And we have some interesting data here in terms of looking at gamers, and across the board, whether it's going out and traveling again, visiting a casino, going out to restaurants, watching films. Gamers are more likely than the general population to be more eager to do that again now that we're kind of coming into the tail end, or kind of the evolution of where the pandemic is at. So I think that's really good context. Jumping into our conversation and throwing it back to Claire with some of what we'll talk about in terms of the cultural importance of online gaming and where it's going from here.
Amazing. Thank you, Nicole. I definitely watched that presentation with my mouth open at some stages. I find it so fascinating. I think the games industry is so fascinating, and the audiences are kind of incredible, the way that they're growing and changing. So I want to welcome both of you back, and welcome Archit to the screen. Hi, Archit. So we met, actually, I was just looking at my emails, and my first email from you was from you at Google in 2013.
That is correct.
Which was ages, so many years ago. But we met in 2017 at the Webby Awards, where we had you on stage to celebrate Pokemon Go's win. And to me, that was kind of one of the most fundamental moments of the games industry really kind of like exploding. And I find Niantic also really fascinating because I know that it has a different take on the games industry to a lot of the other games companies. So, and you have been leading PR there for a long time. And so I'd love you just to talk about that take and a little bit about, what you're focused on at the moment.
Yeah. It's funny, I actually recently had my 10-year anniversary with the Niantic team. We were formed within Google. We were set up as a sort of small business unit within Google. Our founder and CEO, John Hanke, founded this company called Keyhole back in the day. Google acquired Keyhole in 2004, and the technology behind Keyhole became Google Earth. And a lot of the sort of mapping technology was also then used in Google Maps. And over the years, John built the geo organization within Google, and he wanted to sort of, in 2011, do something different and move on and try something new and go back to his gaming roots, because he'd worked on a gaming company before. And that's how Niantic started. And I joined shortly thereafter in 2011 and started focusing on product marketing. How do we actually market these types of products and experiences? And the interesting thing that I realized from the get-go was that this team, initially the founding team, was, there were a lot of people that were very passionate about gaming, and obviously in some cases, like John, had a background in gaming, but the core fundamental expertise was in building geolocation services and geolocation capabilities. And that really informed the perspective that we've had over the years. So, our mission is to inspire people to explore the world together. And we feel like games and gaming experiences are a great way to enable that. So we started off with launching Ingress back in 2012, which was this giant capture the flag in the real world, where you're capturing these flags, which in real life are historical markers or museums or libraries or what have you. But these are interesting places that we wanted people to go, and that game really took off. We saw more than 25 million downloads for that product over the years. And Pokemon Go came out in 2016, and that was the product that really brought us on the world map. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that product, over a period of time. But the thing that's been pretty consistent across the last decade is we have three pillars that we focus on with any product that we launch, and that's our unique take with regards to gaming. These pillars are exploration, exercise, and real world social. And the idea is through our games, can we get people to go places that they might not have gone before, or get them to walk one more block or a few more steps, or enable them to connect with others in the real world. And that's the way we believe real world community building can happen. And I was, like you, surprised pleasantly to see Nicole's stat there about gamers engaging even more, or expressing their desire to engage even more in real world experiences. I mean, I can say that for myself. I've had Zoom fatigue, like all of us, and eager to sort of go back and do more. And as a company, we want to enable that as well. So yeah, that's just a little bit about sort of Niantic and our take.
I mean, gaming has had such an explosive growth, as Nicole's deck showed us over the last few years. And as I said, Pokemon Go, I think, was one of those kind of moments that we saw real growth. Archit, can you talk a little bit about the early days of Pokemon Go and the explosive interest and what that was like?
Yeah, so we launched Pokemon Go in 2016 in partnership with the Pokemon Company. And it was just this incredible, experience where we had this beloved IP that was around for 20 or so years, and we brought that IP into the world through this cutting edge, novel form of game experience, which was you have to walk around the world and you can explore and you can catch Pokemon where you are, and it had these very simple yet sort of appealing elements, like if you're near a fountain or a lake, or if you're at the beach, you'll find water type Pokemon. If you're in the park, you'll find a grass type Pokemon, and so on and so forth. So giving users that reason to explore, go places that they might not typically go. And a core tenet of the game that Tatsuo Nomura, who is the product manager of the product on the game, sort of had, was he wanted to ensure that the product was as approachable as possible. When we launched, it was really as simple as tossing a ball, catching a Pokemon, and then you want to keep walking and catch the next one. And we think that the simplicity of the game was really something that struck a chord, as well as the novelty. No one had experienced this type of game at that scale before, where you are actually physically moving to catch these virtual creatures and all that. So, before we launched the product, we had a feeling that this would be popular, especially with Pokemon fans who are absolutely passionate about the franchise. But we did not expect it to be as viral and explosive as it ended up being. These visuals that we saw were just, one of our recent events that happened, and we do a lot with events within Pokemon Go, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in just a bit. But I think what was really surprising to us was just the variety in our audience. We would get a lot of fan mail and stories from our users, where grandparents and grandkids were playing the game together. Or I saw this email from, a dad who was explaining how he finally reconnected with his son because of their shared love of Pokemon Go. And, so I think those types of, emails and letters were always just so heartwarming and gave the team that further motivation and passion to sort of keep going, with a lot more features that have been added over the years. But I think for us, it felt like a lot of our initial core player base would probably not have described themselves as gamers, at the time. Like, if you were to interview them and ask them, they would have probably not said that I'm a gamer, but they would play Pokemon Go. And so for us, that felt like something that we should continue to invest in and build. And we just had Pokemon Go's 5th anniversary last year, and we're coming up on 6 years with the product, and it's still going incredibly strong. And the team's doing an amazing job of keeping that game so vibrant and alive. And we still feel like, as you might have seen from the visuals from that event, a lot of the people, again, it's people from everywhere. It's a pretty widely appealing product, and those are the types of experiences we want to build more of.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about it, is that it's for everyone. Nicole, talking about everyone, At YouGov, have you seen the gaming audiences shift over the last couple of years, especially mobile gamers? What platforms have grown, and where are gamers spending their time at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, the first big change or influx that we saw in the industry was when the advent of mobile gaming came. I always tell people when I got into gaming, mobile gaming was brick breaker on a BlackBerry. And since then, think of the experiences we have on mobile phones now. It's pretty amazing to just see how much that has changed. And I think, what happened is there's obviously, now almost everyone has a gaming system in their hand, their smartphone. So the accessibility of gaming has just been incredible. But also just the proliferation of content with the ability for, apps to come out and kind of that quick cycle that in traditional console PC gaming takes a really long time for a new game to be developed, be put out, be finalized. The faster cycle of mobile just puts so much more content out there, which attracts a really much broader audience to the platform, which is great. So that was kind of the first big influx, but we've also seen a lot of additional movement. More and more people are getting engaged with console gaming. I'm sure many of you have heard some of the supply issues with PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, which existed even before supply chain issues, right? There were shortages. So I think in particular, the pandemic really kind of got more people engaged in gaming, either within the household or just people who, may have been lapsed gamers that have kind of returned to it. Nintendo Switch is also, such a popular, accessible social platform that we've seen a lot of huge growth into. So it's been really interesting to see kind of mobile being a bit of a gateway for people. But then as people come into the category through mobile, they start to expand their experiences into other platforms as well.
Archit, can you talk a little bit? One of the great things about the pandemic is that it has meant that one of the few great things about the pandemic. It means that there has been people have started venturing outside and spending their time outside exploring the world. So it would be great to understand how Niantic's audiences have shifted over the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, we've definitely experienced growth since March 2020 with all of our products. Pokemon Go. We actually launched a new product called Pikmin Bloom in partnership with Nintendo last year, and that's been really well received, by the player community. With a set of products that at their core necessitate people walking out, heading outside, connecting with others. When the pandemic started, it definitely triggered an immense amount of anxiety for all of us at Niantic. We wanted to ensure at the time that our users could get the entertainment and joy from the products no matter where they were. And so we made a bunch of adjustments to the gameplay so that we could ensure that our users could enjoy Pokemon Go or Ingress, regardless of what their situation was, whether they were sort of playing from home or whether they were sort of just going for a solo walk. So a lot of those adjustments were very well received by the player community, and that really helped us, continue to sort of drive that growth. Conducting in real life events is a very big part of sort of Niantic's, marketing as well as our sort of core product offerings. We feel like events are where it all comes together and where the product experiences are really, the most delightful and at their peak. So obviously it was a bummer when we had to sort of, we had to basically cancel our in-person events. But what we did was we actually delivered those events to our users through the game itself, through in-game ticketing experiences and what have you, so that they could play them, wherever they were. And we now actually have a multiple series of events that happen. We actually have monthly community days in all of our products where one day there's something really special that happens in these games and everyone is encouraged to sort of go out and participate. We have those across all of our products. And for 2022, we've actually announced that we'll have Pokemon Go Fests again. So that'll be, for a lot of our player base, that'll be just really exciting to sort of experience those types of events again. It's like Disneyland, but without rides. The experience is participatory. You're actually walking around for hours and hours, sort of catching Pokemon, encountering Pokemon you might have never seen before, and that sort of thing. So, through the pandemic, we've obviously innovated in terms of how our products deliver experiences. We've seen growth. We've seen, changes in, certain changes in how our users, engage with our products. And and we've also launched a new product. So I think going forward, we're really eager to get back to those real world experiences and have those events where the community comes together again.
Well, talking about experiences, Nicole, based on your data, what kind of experiences are people craving right now, and where is interest maybe lacking or being lost?
Yeah, so I think let's maybe kind of talk about that from a digital virtual experiences standpoint, and then also a live in-person experiences standpoint. So I think on the digital virtual, one of the things that we saw a lot of increased appetite for during the pandemic, and I think that is and will continue, is kind of a lot of those events that bring together gaming culture and other elements of culture, whether that's fashion. There's been a huge movement looking at fashion brands engaging with fans and creating special content and products and skins and things within games, to music. Obviously, there's been plenty of great examples of music concerts happening right inside a particular game. So that's one thing that we've really seen a lot of, not just happening in supply of, but also consumer engagement with. And I think that really follows one of the trends I mentioned in the deck, which was that gaming is becoming so much more of just a general part of people's social engagement and how they interact with people, that it's no longer being seen as, okay, video games are just for going in and playing by myself or playing with that one friend that I always game with. It's a hangout. It's definitely accelerated during the pandemic, but it's hey, we're all gonna go home after school, do our homework, and meet up in Roblox or meet up in Minecraft or whatever it may be. And sometimes that may be actually playing the game and building something. Sometimes it may be chatting. And it's really cool to see how that kind of like digital ecosystem has become something that people are engaging with within gaming. But then on the flip side, we also have the live events side. And I mean, there's definitely, from all the data we have, pent-up demand for people to, get out. Of course, people want it to be safe and secure and feel comfortable with it. But we see, I think we mentioned earlier Zoom fatigue. It's not just those of us that are in conference calls every day. Like our data shows that there's extreme Zoom fatigue with people, that it's kind of like, okay, online events, I get it, they're old, but they're not always, especially for certain kind of like big, big experiences, they're not always a great substitute for real life. So things like music festivals and the things that I think have maybe suffered the most in terms of really big audiences, but also just really big experiences that are hard to replicate in a digital environment, are things that I think people are most kind of had that pent-up demand for. That and travel, I think, are two of the big things that we see, of just people getting to go somewhere else, experience something else, leave behind that house they've been stuck in for 2 years or apartment or whatever it is, and have a change of scenery.
Yeah, we're all dying to get out of the house. One of the areas that we discussed on our pre-production call, which I think is really fascinating as well, is the gamification of things. And we've been thinking about the use of gamification for a little time now, and more widely, and the use cases. Nicole, have you seen the use of gamification creating new experiences for consumers, particularly in esports or other areas?
Absolutely. So gamification is a huge trend, and it's certainly not limited to just kind of that digital entertainment sphere. I mean, everything from just online contests and little things like Wordle. I mean, you just kind of see gaming. I saw an article yesterday that put it really well. It's nothing can provide an experience and a surge of excitement like gaming, and the surprise that comes with it, and to some extent kind of the competitive aspect of it. So certainly esports is competitive gaming with events, right? So that's kind of like the apex of all things gaming. But when you look at gamification and things like, like I mentioned, things like fashion or even TV content, things like that, there's a lot more of that happening and a lot more experimentation. We're starting to see more and more brands. I know we'll probably move into speaking about brands and advertisers here at some point, but a lot more brands creating their own game experiences, not just their own apps, but their own gaming specific apps, and really kind of looking at, okay, this is how people want to spend their time. I should create an experience for them that involves gaming, but also gives them a direct conversation with my brand. So it's kind of taking it one step past advertising within games and just creating that game content themselves. I think there's been good examples of that and not so good examples of that, right? That's a big experimentation, and there's a reason that video game companies take so long to put games out. There's a lot of work that goes into a great experience, but I definitely think that will be a trend that continues for a while as gaming just becomes more popular among more people.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Wordle, our team is obviously obsessed with Wordle. We love Wordle. And one of the reasons that I think it is so successful, of course, is, as you were saying, Nicole, it's just so simple. And Archit, I know in October you all launched a very simple gamified application called Pikmin Bloom, which you mentioned before. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we launched Pikmin Bloom in partnership with Nintendo in October of last year, and I would say it's the best way to describe it would be it's an incredibly cute pedometer. It's a very simple product. It's a simple game that just nudges you to walk more. And going back to our core principle as a company, how do we get our users off the couch, out exploring, just taking a few more steps a day? And there's a lot of research, a lot of literature on just the benefits of walking, both in terms of mental health as well as just physical health. And I think we've all heard that classic sort of adage of like, hey, can you get your 10,000 steps? If you get your 10,000 steps, it's good for you. So the team built this product with the intention of helping users get 10,000 steps in a day. And of course, if you don't, that's fine. It's all about sort of making it fun and joyful. So we worked with Nintendo, and they have this IP called Pikmin, which is immensely popular, especially amongst gamers. A lot more popular in Japan than in the United States, but it's a pretty big IP. And the idea was to use these Pikmin to nudge people into walking. And it's a pretty simple game where all you have to do is sort of walk, and then you get these seedlings, and then you need to walk more to get these seedlings to hatch, and they hatch Pikmin. And these Pikmin help you get further fruit or what have you to feed themselves, so that you can again then collect more seedlings and hatch more Pikmin and then walk more. But the cool thing is at the end of every day, you get a little life log. Any photos that you might have taken, any places you might have been, the app automatically sort of presents that to you as this was what your day was like. It does a check-in, what was your day like? Were you happy? Were you neutral? Were you sad? So it's like a little sort of mindful moment, and that's your life log. And then at the end of the week, you can actually go back and see how many steps you took each day, the experiences you had. And my life log is I have an 18-month-old daughter, so my life log is completely photos of her in the park, in the playground, and that kind of thing. And so it's a pretty simple app, and I think it's been immensely well received, and we're excited to continue growing it. One of the things that we've learned from Pokemon Go and our other products is this benefit of having those monthly beats, like a community day, where everyone could come together for a limited amount of time, and on one day there's something special that's happening in the product. So we actually have these community days in Pikmin Bloom as well, where one Saturday a month there's something really exciting that happens in the product, and it gets you a lot more benefits. But at the end of the day, again, the message is simple. Just get your 10,000 steps, and if you're you're like me and you're in meetings all day long, this app can give you those subtle nudges to just maybe do a meeting while walking, and just as Nicole was saying, gamification is everywhere. We use gamification mechanics here to just get people to be a little healthier in that sense. So yeah, that's Pikmin Bloom.
I downloaded Pikmin Bloom on the weekend, and there is no one that's going to be happier about that than my dog, who actually has not had his 10,000 steps, I think, since, I don't know, let's be honest, since my first son was born, maybe. You'll be happy about it.
My dog got a lot more walks when Pokemon Go came out too, so
oh yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. Yes.
Let's talk about brand activations, because this is obviously the biggest conversation for our industry, in the advertising industry, at the moment. Part of our Webby Talk this year, which of course is focused on Way Too New, explores how companies are launching brand activations in games, and how audiences are attracted to those. And obviously the current buzzword is the metaverse. It's a hot topic. And with the rise of gaming audiences, more companies want to meet them where they are. So Nicole, from your perspective, what types of companies are leaning into branded activations? I know we've spoken a little bit more about fashion, food, beverages, etc.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think the pandemic really shed a lot of light on gaming as a place for people to turn their sponsorships dollars to, whether that was in esports. Obviously, that's kind of like the most traditional, shifting from sport and live events that maybe weren't happening over to esports, which were still being executed digitally, but even more so within games themselves. I always tell people, if you look at the amount of time that people spend in games, and if you look at the amount of money that is just made and transacted within the gaming industry, then you look at the amount of ad dollars that are spent in games themselves, it is still an extremely undertapped medium. And so what we saw really during the pandemic, and that certainly continued, was actually across the board, a lot of different brand categories jumping in, maybe those that hadn't in the past, that maybe didn't feel like it was as much of a connection. But so we really have seen everything from, shoe fashion to high fashion, like a Louis Vuitton. You're starting to see more kind of cross entertainment advertising of looking at, new TV shows or movies launching and talking about them within an in-game environment. And then, of course, kind of those quick consumption goods like snacks, sodas, those are always going to be popular because they pop up top of mind to people when they're gaming, and then it's quick to run out and grab them. Food services has been another huge one, with the DoorDashes and Grubhubs of the world growing so much, and knowing that people are sitting there and gaming and, we're going to need to eat eventually. That's been a really popular category. But there's so many others. And in fact, not to do your job here, Claire, but I know, I think Archit's got a great example with Circle K, and one that maybe wouldn't, from the onset, if you just mentioned it, wouldn't necessarily sound like, oh, that makes perfect sense to be in gaming. But as some data we have shows, was actually super successful. So it might be a good example to kind of talk through.
Archit, go for it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we've experimented with a variety of different partnerships with a variety of brands over the years, and we've had certain partnerships that have done really well. Be it in North America or in Japan or even in Europe. So in the case of Pokemon Go, as an example, we had a partnership with when Gucci and North Face launched their collab and they did a drop. They also did a drop in Pokemon Go. And the way we sort of manifested that in our product was our users that were to go by a Gucci store and swipe the Pokestop, at that store, they would automatically get the avatar item, which was the jacket and the T-shirt. And we did a very similar partnership with JD Sports and Nike, in Europe. And again, to sort of add to something what Nicole was saying, gamers are incredibly influential. They love to express themselves, especially in the games, and they're also they like to share. They like to sort of share their accomplishments in the games. So it makes a lot of sense for us to give them these types of opportunities with these incredible brands to express themselves and show their passion and joy and whatnot. And Circle K has been a recent partnership. We've actually had Circle K as a partner with Ingress early on, several years ago, and we saw a nice increase in foot traffic to Circle K locations because Ingress players wanted to get to these locations and get a lot more items and objects from this. And that's one of the beauties of the Niantic real world platform, where we can direct just through the game foot traffic to these locations, and that is something that brands really like, the ability to actually get someone into the door. And the Circle K partnership sort of came back, and we did that with Pokemon Go, and we have seen an incredible take rate. And I think it's only got us a lot more pumped about what more could we do. And the teams at Niantic are actually building a variety of different ad units in a way that doesn't disrupt gameplay, in a way that actually adds to gameplay and actually sort of leverages these brands in meaningful ways within the products. So we're very excited to invest a lot more in this and work with awesome, innovative brands that want to tap into this incredible community.
Yeah, and I think to quickly just piggyback on what Archit said there and then in terms of adding to the gaming experience, that's a lot of the data that we collect on sponsorship and in-game advertising. The key is that gamers feel like, of course, number one, that it's not a campaign that is force fit into their environment, but number two, that they feel like at the end of the day, it's supporting them as a gamer, it's supporting their passion for the game, and especially if it's a free game where advertising is being shown, that they feel like they're getting something in return. And I love the Niantic games for that reason, because it's such a seamless, like you go there and you get an in-game achievement that you wouldn't anywhere else, and so that makes it really easy and a no-brainer for consumers and players to see what the benefit and the connection is. But and we've certainly seen that in a lot of our brand tracking data. I think Circle K jumped up its brand recommendation likelihood, consideration, visitation, all jumped up among mobile gamers and people aware of Pokemon kind of right after things launched. So just goes to show that when you provide benefit, consumers appreciate it and ultimately act on it, which is the end goal of any sort of in-game advertising, right?
Player value is something that we have been talking about a lot recently. How can you provide value for the player and for the brand? Then it all works together. Emma, I think we might be ready for some questions from the audience.
And something that we talk a lot about at Niantic is we don't want to live in a world where all of us are sort of glued to screens or glued to a device at all times. And we evolved as humans to have a physical social experience. And our take is, how about provide these experiences in a way that get people connecting with others and get them sort of heading out, venturing out. So for us, AR feels like the ideal sort of technology to deliver those experiences with, because it's subtle, it's augmented, it's not replacing your reality, it's adding to it, it's making it a little more joyful and bright. So as far as the metaverse is concerned, today our products are played on mobile phones. There's a lot of researchers at Niantic building tech for headsets, which is likely a paradigm shift that we will experience in a few years. And the perspective is, how can we again have those simple, subtle experiences that make it a little bit more enjoyable to experience when you're sort of out and about. So you might be wearing an AR headset, and you might turn on a reality channel that's the Pokemon Go channel, and you might actually start seeing a few trees, some grass, and then Pikachu pops out from there, and you catch it, and then you sort of move on and keep going. So that's sort of like how we think about it. And I'll pass it to Nicole if you want to talk a little bit about the data side of it.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree on the kind of AR applications, and certainly what that can do and has already been doing in the gaming world. I think metaverse, from all the data we have, it's a buzzword within our industries. It's something that people are obviously super excited about, and there's being a lot of infrastructure and things built out around. But when you actually talk to consumers, I was just looking at data today, about half of US consumers basically don't understand what the metaverse is. And a large portion of the ones who do still aren't very sure that they do. They just kind of know they've heard something and have a general idea. And I actually think, part of that is a kind of a communication and, explaining what it is kind of situation. But the rest of it, I think, is that it still is very much not fleshed out by the very people who are going to create it and make it yet. I think short term, it'll probably look and feel a lot like some of the gaming experiences that people already have, whether that's in, like a Sims or a Second Life or a Roblox, Minecraft, things like that. I think longer term, there'll be a lot more integration of things. We could spend our whole kind of conversation around this, but I think it will be, from a gaming perspective, gaming experiences that are connected that may not be able to be today, and also will probably open things up to new audiences trying new games, because it'll be a more seamless process where everything is kind of not self-contained, but at least there's going to be a lot more fluidity across different platforms if it evolves in the way people are hoping. So lots still to go on that. I know we at YouGov are about to run a huge metaverse focused research piece and dig into that a lot more. So more to come.
Well, we will have to follow up with you on that, more to come, and send it out to our audience as well, because I know that they are desperate for data and information in the metaverse. Mm-hmm. We have a comment, and then we have another question. The comment is, someone wanted us to know that Nintendo and Circle K were both identified as two of the best performing brands in the US around the time of their partnership with Niantic.
Yes, I believe that would be YouGov data. Yes, exactly. So yeah, again, just goes to show that the benefit of partnership, and certainly we see a lot of brands that have that lift and get that increase out of a partnership, but not all, because it's just as much about execution as it is, you can create higher awareness, but that doesn't necessarily lead to the improvement of those further down the funnel brand metrics, which is something that we look at a lot when we're measuring brand data. So yes.
And the great thing about Niantic is that you get foot traffic to the places as well. Okay, this is a big one, guys. What are both of your thoughts on NFTs and the prospect of taking skins, avatars, etc., across all platforms and games?
I can start at least again from the consumer data perspective. I think it's actually not that dissimilar to what people are telling us and feeding back about the metaverse. I think it's a pretty small microcosm right now who are comfortable with NFTs, understand, feel confident enough to invest in them. It's new, it's different, right? And I think the prospects of what they can offer in terms of, the ability to have something exclusive, something that you can show off and, show either your accomplishments or what you're willing to pay for or whatever. Those are trends that are, as big as they ever have been in broader culture. So it makes a lot of sense that those would all just kind of go digital. But I do think there's a lot of other things that need to happen first in terms of crypto wallets and those being more prevalent and more people using them, that will actually make that, make something like NFTs and crypto a more democratic opportunity, which I think is also a lot of like what a really important and interesting topic that's happening around NFT, crypto, and metaverse right now is, how much do those play to versus take away from diversity of opinion, diversity of people, and put everyone on a level playing field. So I think because of that, it's all still a bit of a slow build, but the excitement around things being able to be transferred from one thing to another is great. And being in the gaming industry for a long time, there's always been frustration around, why can't I take my wallet or my points from this platform and put them over here, or have this system talk to that system? So I think gamers in theory love the idea, but will still take a while to kind of happen in practice.
Yeah, at Niantic, we don't have an official position on non-fungible tokens and how they would apply to our games, as an example. We're obviously curious, deeply curious, on the subject, and are reading a lot about it and having discussions about it. I think my personal take on this is non-fungible tokens are definitely a very interesting and useful technology, in the sense that what smart contracts can provide to artists, in terms of just them benefiting from further sales down the road, and then them having a cut of those sales. To me, from an artist or a creator centric standpoint, that feels like a wonderful innovation. But I think we're early in the journey with NFTs, and I think there's also clearly a lot of skepticism about just how sort of energy guzzling this technology is, and I know that there's a lot of smart people working to sort of make that better. At the end of the day, for us, we definitely feel like if you could take aspects of your identity or how you express yourself in Pokemon Go or Pikmin Bloom or Ingress, and if you could sort of take that across all the different games, or maybe even potentially sort of other places, that would be definitely something that gamers would love. I know I would enjoy elements of that. So that specifically feels appealing. But we don't have any plans at the moment, or we're not necessarily sort of focused in that area. For us, it's just ensuring that our products continue to sort of provide good entertainment experiences, and that's it.
We're running out of time, so we have one great question, I think, to end with, for both of you. What are some intersections between gaming and learning or education that you may have noticed in your work?
Sure. I can chime in first. I think so much of this connects to the gamification piece of things. So we're seeing a lot. Obviously, there's more and more technology being used in classrooms, across all grade levels, and a lot of that, especially at younger grade levels, is gamified, right? In terms of kind of accomplishments and getting rewards and building them within your app environment and things like that. So yeah, certainly starting to see that a lot more. But I think to me personally, some of the cooler applications of that have to do with things that are related to STEM and building, and kind of giving more access to those types of opportunities to students who may not otherwise have it, or that it's just expensive to recreate in the real world, right? So it's kind of that gaming and gamification that is not replacing previous kind of educational tools that maybe we're doing as just as good of a job not being games, but really that are adding to the student experience and putting something in students' hands they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to. And a lot of that does seem to come in kind of that science tech field.
Yeah, just to add to Nicole, I think we've not been focused on education per se. Um, Having said that, I feel like learning has been a side effect of some of our products. So, in the early days of Ingress, we actually got some outreach from universities and schools where they were trying to get their students to learn about some of the history of some of their places, some of the places in their towns, some of the places in their cities. And every single way spot, which is every single point of interest that we have on our platform, and we have more than 9 million of these across the world. These are locations that are publicly accessible, safe, and have some sort of cultural or historical relevance and significance. And the way they show up in the product is there's a name, there's a description, and there's a photo. And so if you walk to like a museum, it'll tell you a little bit about the history. That's what you see in the games. So we've actually, the students told us that they actually found that a great way to learn a little bit more about the history. They found a meaning in certain places that they probably didn't know that those places had those meanings. Or I myself in the early days learned that in San Francisco, in the financial district, which is a lot of landfill, sunken underneath are a lot of whaling vessels and ships that came to San Francisco in 1749 for the 1849 for the gold rush, and many of those are still sort of sunken underneath the buildings and whatnot. So you learn all these kind of sort of fascinating historical tidbits, and that's been sort of our experience with like people just having a little bit more knowledge or realization of what happened in those places. But yeah, other than that, we're not really sort of focused on the education use case as such.
I mean, that seems like that's a pretty amazing way to learn, is through exploring the world and finding new places. All right, I think we're kind of hitting on time. Before I wrap up, I want to quickly give everybody a reminder. The Webby Awards extended entry deadline is coming up next Friday, the February 11th. This is your last chance to enter the Webby Awards for the 26th annual season. We have a ton of new categories in games and virtual and remote experiences, but you can't win if you don't enter. And I'm sure Archit can attest that it's a pretty amazing feeling to be on that Webby Awards stage.
Thank you for the experience.
Some of our favourite photos are of Archit on stage. We also want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, YouGov, of course, WP Engine and Brandlife for their support for this program. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I also want to say, of course, a huge thank you to our guests today, Archit and Nicole. Thank you. And finally, we're going to send Nicole's presentation out to everyone who has attended the event, so you will have the data and can use your data in client pitches or in brainstorms coming up with new ideas. Hopefully it will spur on some new incredible experiences, Webby Award experiences. Thank you, everyone.